Good morning, my loyal subjects. It is so wonderful. I get up in the morning and put on $7 worth of high definition makeup, like I just got out of the shower, and here we are together again. And I love this. I love this. It's one of my favorite days of the month. And speaking of that, I just need to give you a little update. We had a meeting about the fact that we have a steering committee meeting, and then the very next day we have an open meeting, and we thought we needed a little more time in between to organize ourselves in case there were things that had to be done. So from now on, it will always be the fourth Thursday. This open meeting will be the fourth Thursday of the month, same time. Ken will send that out in the newsletter, and it'll be posted when we do who the next speaker is, George Allen. But I just wanted you to know, so the next one is the 29th of June, so that we have a steering committee, and then we have a couple of weeks to implement something that we might need to do, and then we're ready to roll on the 29th. So you have a little more time in between, but we will remind you many, many, many times. We had a meeting, I just wanted everybody to know, with the executive board of PHI the other night, Ken and I. And I just want you to know that we're all on the same page, and we're all working toward the common goal. And we will find ways to collaborate and ways to integrate information and resources. They're an extraordinary group. They've been around a long time. Dr. Yulberg Marnie is part of that. And it was good to know that we all care about the very same things, and we're working hard to make the advocacy part of our everyday existence for the people. And today we have a speaker that I met, and I'll tell you how I met Teri Dreher, but I won't give you her background. I'll let her do that. And I was getting ready to do a cooking segment on a local TV show, and I listened to her being interviewed by the anchor that morning. And as she finished up and she was leaving the set, I mugged her and I said, I need you, and I need to talk to you about the group that I help. And will you be interested in talking to me about coming on talking? And she said, absolutely. And the reason that was, when I looked at her book, How to Be a Healthcare Advocate for Yourself and Your Loved Ones, I thought, this is somebody who has some information that maybe we could use, and she can help us and we can help her. So where are you on my screen here? Can you say hello, Teri, so you'll come up?
Yes. Yes. So I'm assuming that at some point I can share some slides or not. Is that not?
You can. I'm going to set that up right now. So
okay. Yes. Thank you very much, Teri.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
so go ahead. So you start. I just want to know, how did you get to be who you are today?
Sure. That's a great question. So I guess it started when I was a kid. I'm the oldest of 9 kids, and I was always trying to take care of my younger brothers and sisters. And I always wanted to be a nurse. I was a critical care nurse for over 40 years. And when I saw all the changes coming down the pike with the Affordable Care Act, from the inside of the hospital, I thought to myself, people are going to need help out there, because whenever healthcare becomes more about the charting than the patient, and more about the money and moving people in and out of the hospital so quickly, patients are going to suffer. And it got quickly very complex and fragmented, and communication was causing problems. I saw it at the bedside when nurses were paying more attention to their charting than they were assessment changes in the hospital. And I remember saying to somebody, this is not going to be good for patients. And shortly after that, I had a personal experience where I just happened to be the ICU nurse on a cruise ship with my extended family when my father-in-law, who was 77 at the time, had a life-threatening crisis. And I was able to very quickly put together a plan, get him back to the US, get him the care that he needed. And over the next 6 weeks, he had a lot of very serious complications. He was in intensive care multiple times, had 7 different procedures, almost died. And that was 14 years ago, and he's still alive today. But I remember saying to myself at the end of it, what do people do that don't have a nurse or doctor in the family? And my family said very clearly he would have died if you weren't there. And so gratefully, my father-in-law, who is still alive today and doing quite well, I guess he's almost 90 years old now. And he paid for me to go through a training program to become a professional patient advocate. And while I was taking that training program, I was advocating for a patient in the ICU, and I almost got fired. And it was a real light bulb moment for me that nurses inside the hospitals aren't really safe to strongly advocate for patients any longer. I mean, every good nurse, the heart of nursing is really patient advocacy, but there's a conflict now because it's so much about moving people through the system quickly so the hospital can make as much money as possible and just get them out. And a lot of times patients actually don't have a safe discharge plan. And that's kind of a moral dilemma for the care managers in the hospital because they have to get them out. Once insurance says it's time to go, then the hospital has to eat over $6,000 a day to get them out. And so anyway, when I was almost fired for strongly advocating for a patient, and it turned out I was right about that patient, and the patient did survive and the hospital didn't get sued because the family could tell that I had done everything humanly possible to help this dear woman. And there's just a lot of scary stuff going on out there. Every time I talk to groups of nurses, they all have their own stories too about how, they're pressured. And so I started my business, Nurse Share Patient Advocates, 12 years ago. And I'm sure everybody thought I had lost my marbles because I had no business degree. I was an ICU nurse and I was making six figures at the time. And when I left and started with nothing, basically, I just decided that failure is not an option. So I went out there and just passionately told the story about how patient advocacy can help people in the community. And so I devote a lot of my time volunteering to speak to groups such as yours about how important self-advocacy is and how important it is that you be an advocate for your loved ones. Many of you probably have family members that have gone in and out of the healthcare system, and you know what it feels like to be frightened, frustrated, angry, just all those kinds of feelings. I know what that feels like, and that's what drives me. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen and just go through some of the, basics of what advocacy is and try to share some pointers. How much time do I have, Ina? I want to stop.
I think, excuse me, maybe about a half hour.
Okay, that'll be more than enough time.
Excuse me, and then we'll have some questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, let's see, slideshow. Okay. Okay. So patient advocacy 101 is what I call this particular slideshow. And my story basically came out of pain. And I think people don't change without pain. I thought I would always be an ICU nurse, but I have to say this is the most rewarding job I've ever had in my whole life because I have long-term relationships with patients, and I just absolutely love coming in and being able to untangle a great big mess. I have an interesting story this week, actually, of a post-polio survivor. And this woman, I was in Rotary for years, and she's a fellow Rotarian. And this woman ended up having spinal problems. She needed surgery, got complications. She needed to have hip surgery. But while she was in rehab, she got the worst possible care in rehab. I mean, And she's been basically stuck there for 9 months in a horrible, horrible nursing home. And people don't know the difference sometimes when you're in the middle of it, what your patient rights are and what's a good or a bad nursing home. So I finally got called in about 2-3 weeks ago, and what I saw just broke my heart. This woman has such severe contractures of her lower feet due to poor care and negligence that she actually has to have surgery to correct the they're called equinus contractures of the lower feet. It's when your plantar flexion, you lay in bed so long that your toes just go down, and it looks like the only way you can walk is if you have 5-inch spike heels, and she can't walk. So now she has to go have surgery for that, and then she has to have a hip replacement. Well, it's kind of a complex thing because she's got several complex comorbidities, we call them. If you have more than 3 medical conditions, you're much more likely to end up in the hospital over the next year. And she's got about 7 or 8 complex comorbidities, including post-polio syndrome. So yesterday was a really good day because I finally put all the building blocks together, and with her and her husband's permission, moved her to a really good nursing home. And last night she called me at 8:30 and she was almost crying because she had real chicken for dinner. Because the food was so bad in that other place. She had just kind of gotten used to it. But this is somebody that has devoted so much of her life to helping other people. And she's awake, alert, oriented, and she's got a husband who's been doing the best he can. But the rules of the game are changing out there, ladies and gentlemen, and you don't even know what to ask sometimes. And that's why I started my company, so that I can go in and understand. I tell people, think of me like a cross between an advanced practice nurse, a lawyer, and a bulldog. My job is to protect people. And today my job is to tell you how to protect yourself.
So Teri, the thing that comes up for me when you speak like this is that we really have to talk about some health literacy. We really need to do that. I mean, the fact that you wound up in the wrong place tells me that somebody didn't do the research, or they were just told where to go and they accepted it. And that would be the moment that I would break up with my doctor.
Yeah. Well, what happens in hospitals right now, because they're so motivated to get people out quickly, hospitals figuratively kind of get into bed with nursing homes. So they develop business alliances, and these nursing homes will take anything that the hospital sends them. But the care managers in the hospitals, they don't know because they've never visited these nursing homes.
Got it.
All they know is that the higher ups in corporate have developed these partnerships. And so when you have a partnership with a hospital, you have to take anything they send you, period. And so some of these really bad nursing homes are located in the same half-mile radius of hospitals. So, you know, nurses never go over there and look at them. They don't see what they look like. And when I went to this bad nursing home, out front of the nursing home, there's a little smoking kiosk. And there were about 8 or 10 people with obvious psychiatric disabilities smoking cigarettes out front. And I thought, oh, this is a bad sign. You know, when you go to a nursing home where there's usually you cannot smoke on campus of any hospital or nursing home or healthcare facility at all, but they have a little kiosk there. But anyway, I digress. So anyway, it's just been a wonderful thing. So patient advocacy really is focused on improving healthcare quality. We're not like the police that come in and start pointing our fingers at everybody. But when we start asking the right questions and talking medical language, healthcare quality improves. I went with another patient to a doctor's office last week, and she said, "Oh my gosh, he's never talked to me that long before." Well, doctors love knowing that patients have hired their own RN patient advocate, because then they can explain everything, and then they kind of raise their game a little bit, and they pay a little bit more attention because they know that somebody that understands the rules is paying attention. And a lot of our clients are what we call senior orphans. They don't have any family in the area to advocate for them and care for them. So my whole focus is protecting patient rights. I actually wrote an article for Chicago Health Magazine. I really got my dander up about patient rights violations, especially during COVID. And I wrote an article that they said got one of their highest share rates ever. And I'm talking about how hospitals and nursing homes, right, left, and sideways, are violating patient rights. And that's a whole nother tributary tangent I could go off, and I'm not going to, but I know more about patient rights than most lawyers do. And so we get a lot of referrals from attorneys who are families, have families in distress, and they call us. My dad was a Marine, and I say it's sort of like calling in the Marines. You call in the Marines when something's not right and you just don't know what it is, and you don't know the right questions to ask. So we fill a lot of the gaps in modern healthcare, and there are a lot of gaps in modern healthcare right now. So we are not adversarial, argumentative. We don't have a winner versus loser mindset. Hospitals are staffed by good-hearted doctors and nurses that are, quite frankly, a lot of them burned out right now, and kindness goes a long way. And so I'm always respectful and kind to people in the hospital, but I ask those kind of questions that, you know, if one of you had a serious health issue and went to go see a new consultant, and you had a daughter that was an ICU nurse, that's what kind of questions that we stand there and ask. But you can ask all the questions too. So patient advocacy is not too expensive for most families. We're way less than lawyers, and it's not giving up your freedom. We come in and highly educate people about what your options are, and then we support whatever your choice is. Sometimes families like to feel like they're doing it all. They don't want any help. They want to do this because they feel that it's a calling. But that kind of a mindset sometimes can be dangerous, because when you don't know what you don't know, that can hurt you. And there are a lot of changes in modern healthcare right now. So legal concerns, I always tell everybody that is, you know, probably over the age of 60, make sure that you have a will, and that only operates on your death. The main player is the executor of your will. And there's a public probate process. If you do not have a will and you have an estate and you don't have a power of attorney for your estate or a trustee or a will, the whole thing has to go to probate, which means it's going to be months and months and months before, or a year or more before, money gets released to pay the bills. And so that is dangerous when you don't have anybody. And I run into people in their 80s all the time that have no power of attorney for healthcare or no power of attorney for their estate. And I think healthcare is the most important one. Sometimes with our senior orphans, we'll serve as power of attorney for healthcare, especially in an emergency, just so there's somebody there that can make well-informed, educated decisions on their behalf if they can't make any. There's also revocable living trusts. There are a lot of different legal documents that a good estate planning attorney can help you get in place. And if you haven't had your estate plan updated within the last 5 years, you probably should, because those are changing all the time. And powers of attorney, there's basically two types. One is your estate or your property, and one is healthcare. If anybody here does not have a power of attorney for healthcare, you should have one as soon as possible. And in an emergency, I will go on the government website, il.gov, and just type in a power of attorney for healthcare. It doesn't have to be notarized. It only needs one witness. And if you don't know what any of the verbiage means in it, you can either Google it or you can call me and ask me, and I'll be glad to march you through what all the different options are. Illinois adopted the POST law a few years ago. POST stands for Provider Order for Life-Sustaining Treatment. So they used to call it the DNR form. Some hospitals still call it the DNR form. So if you do not want full resuscitative measures, you have to have a POST form filled in and signed by a doctor and put on file with your hospital and everybody. Otherwise, if anybody ever calls 911 on you, they'll do everything. And I always tell people, everything isn't like what it looks like on TV. I had an 89-year-old patient once that had suffered a serious stroke. She was on dialysis, and we ran 8 full codes on her within 24 hours. And so she's on dialysis, no urine output, kidney failure, brain showed minimal activity. She was on life support, and she kept having these cardiac arrhythmias that would make her heart stop. And she had told her daughter to never give up on me. And so the daughter, every time we came out after we resuscitated her, the daughter would say, no, I can't make her a do not resuscitate because I promised her I would never do that. So after about 8 times, it got to be an ethical issue for the nurses and doctors taking care of the patient. So I took aside the medical director and I said, look, this is unethical. The next time she has a code, we're going to do what's called a slow code. And you come up, you stand, you observe, you give 1 or 2 medications, wait, and if her heart goes flatline again, you just call the code, which means we're done. And so that's what happened. And when she had a life-threatening arrhythmia again, that happened. And we went out and told the daughter, and she broke down in tears and said, I'm so glad. I was so conflicted because I knew she would never wake up again, but I made a promise to my mom. So you really have to be clear with your family about how much life support you want. Otherwise, they're going to do everything they legally have to.
Teri, I'm going to ask you to take a little bit of a turn here.
Okay.
We are a post-polio organization, and a lot of us don't have these serious medical conditions. And so we all know kind of what we're talking about here. I want to know, our goal is, how do we get people to advocate for themselves? There have to be some tricks of the trade when you walk in to see a doctor. I'm sure and that's what I meant by we have to have some health literacy and advocacy. So all of this stuff, while it's essential for us, I bet because we are so damn smart, we know most of this stuff.
That's true. Okay. Thank you very much, Ina. So
you bet.
I am the last slide. One of the last slides here are getting into the healthcare literacy. So healthcare literacy is really, really important. And what do I mean by healthcare literacy? You need to know as much as possible about whatever conditions you have. Post-polio syndrome has all kinds of neurologic impact as well as spinal impact. And you need to understand that so that when you put that down as one of your medical diagnoses, if a doctor looks confused or has a blank look on his face, somebody's not muted. So, okay. And then you can educate them. And so just make sure that they understand what your special challenges are because of your medical condition. So you probably are going to have more than one chronic medical condition. So a great way to improve your healthcare literacy is to look across the spectrum and not just look at that particular diagnosis, but also look at everything that you need to successfully navigate modern healthcare today. Healthcare literacy today is not just about knowing your medical conditions, it's knowing what the new rules of the game are. And so there are a lot of patient rights that were instituted during COVID that most people don't know about. For instance, HIPAA. Nurses in hospitals pretend they don't understand what HIPAA is. What would happen if you ever could not advocate for yourself? Well, if you have a power of attorney for healthcare form and a HIPAA form that gives your representative, your legal representative, the rights to access to your medical records, they have the right to have full real-time, not get your chart in 2 weeks, but you have the rights to have full real-time access to your chart. Now, some of that is through the portals, but you can also, if you're in the hospital, you can ask your nurse to go over the labs with you every day, any new medications that come down, and you know all of your medications. And I always tell people to put this little app on their phone called drugs.com. So if you're on 4 or 5 medications and you go into the hospital and they start you on another medication, you want to know right away if there's an interaction with that. The pharmacists at hospitals are very busy, and sometimes dangerous interactions can happen. One thing I noticed a lot is if you're on Coumadin and you go on antibiotics, basically, you have to have your ProTime checked every 1 to 2 days after you start antibiotics, because the antibiotics will make your Coumadin much, much stronger. I think Coumadin interacts with almost 300 different medications. So,
Teri, when we go into a doctor's office, one of the things that we have trouble explaining to all of the people in our hemisphere, we are an older and we are a dying population in our hemisphere and in first world countries, is what post-polio is and how it has affected us. And the fact that there really is no cure for this. They're not going to give you any medication to make it better. They may find something that will alleviate some of the discomfort or the pain, but we are in this odd position of many times having to explain ourselves to the doctors. And you will find from every post-polio you talk to that a doctor knows less about our bodies than we do, and that we are the ones who have to educate them as to what's going on. But it's very difficult then to go to another doctor and have to go through it again and again and again. And so I'm wondering if how you deal with, talk to, educate your post-polios, because a lot of this has no meaning to us, what we're talking about here. Do you know what I mean? A lot of what you're saying matters when one has multi comorbidities or goes into the hospital for something. Rarely do we go in. It's always about us getting to the doctor's office and then finding out he only has a little bit of time for us and says, well, you're getting older. That's what your problem is. You're getting older.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to teach everybody how to advocate for themselves in this very particular situation.
Well, doctors are trained to give medications for symptoms. So there's no cure for post-polio syndrome, but the discomfort associated with it and the orthopedic impact of it are things that you may need surgery for at some point, just like anybody in their 70s and 80s may need surgery for different things. So the doctors are looking at what's broken and what I can fix. So doctors get frustrated when you go in and tell them about post-polio syndrome, and they're not an expert on that, but they are focusing in on what part of your illness they can help you with. So it's very helpful to have a preparation of documents ready for people, so you don't have to have the same long conversation all the time with doctors. When I teach people how to put together their medical documents, everybody knows about getting your legal affairs in order and getting your financial affairs in order, but you need to get your medical affairs in order too. And that means putting together a document, maybe 2 pages at the most. So anytime you go into any healthcare facility, in state or out of state, you never know when you're going to have an accident sometime if you're on vacation. And you need to always have a copy of all of your insurance information, your powers of attorney for healthcare, a 2-page document that has your demographics, your insurance information, all of your allergies, your normal vital signs, all of your chronic medical conditions, all of your surgeries, and what challenges you have right now. I call it a medical profile and care plan. So let's say, for instance, if you have some neuropathy associated with post-polio syndrome, and you're seeing a neurologist, the neurologist is focused on the neuropathy. What can we do to mitigate the effects that are altering the life quality of this post-polio syndrome patient? So there are different medications that can help with different symptoms and chronic medical conditions. But most people don't go to a doctor unless they have a problem that they need to be fixed. That's the way the U.S. healthcare system is set up right now. And it's so fast that preparing those documents is really important so you can get all the information in as quickly as possible. Rarely do you have a doctor that will spend more than 5 or 10 minutes in his office with you. So, so he really wants to get in and out of there quickly and to be able to help you. It's more of an assembly line sort of a system in healthcare right now. If you have a good doctor that you've been seeing for a long time, they may see you for a longer period of time, but the reality is that physicians, private physicians, and those that are employees of hospitals have to do more volume today to make the same amount of money. Whereas, you know, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, a surgeon would make $500,000 or $600,000 a year for X amount of patients. Now he has to see twice as many patients. So health literacy isn't just about one particular system. It's understanding their vantage point too, so that when you go in, you want to have a short list of all of your questions and issues and ask the doctor for answers for them, and go in there knowing what your goals are. So if you go in and get in a long conversation about something that the doctor can't fix the source of, then he's going to get frustrated and start backing out of the door. So not only does he have to be respectful of your time, but you have to be respectful of his time too. For instance, if you go in to see a physician and you're having more pain in one of your legs than the other, just go in, address it. If he blows you off, yeah, you're right. It might be time to go see another doctor, but be careful to be very specific about what your goals are when you go into the hospital.
And isn't it not true that once we leave that office, we can ask for our doctor's notes after a visit summary?
You should. You should. When I talk about getting your medical affairs in order and what you can do yourself, you should also have a binder where you keep all of your lab results, and you can print those off of MyChart or any of the online portals in the hospitals, and keep a list of your most recent labs. Keep a list of all of your post-visit summaries, because according to the 2021 CARES Act, all of your records are your legal property. So they can't just give you a homogenized version of your medical records anymore. They have to give you open access. In fact, I had that problem this last week. I have a cancer patient, and when I go into the portal from the oncology groups, notes, I can get all of the labs, I can get the treatment protocol, but I get no doctor's notes. So just yesterday, I had to call and say, we need all of the physician's progress notes and treatment plan. And so when I give a HIPAA, or you or somebody in your family has a HIPAA, you have full access to all of that, not only after you leave the hospital, but while you're in the hospital too.
And in your experience, do you come across doctors who actually know post-polio, nurses who know post-polio, or are you the outlier here?
Well, I know a little bit about it. Very few people that haven't worked with this group completely are going to be experts at it. I've only had 3 clients with post-polio syndrome, and the one that I have this week really involved getting her out of a bad situation into a better care facility. So I can't, in other words, I can't do anything about her post-polio syndrome except educate the nurses in the new facility about what it entails and why she can't feel her feet sometimes, and what the treatment plan is over the coming weeks, and how important it is for her to get up and move around. And she's got a bed sore, and so we're addressing that with proper preventive issues and turning her side to side. So a lot of the things that we put in place are for specific body symptoms, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It
does.
So, John, Manny, are there any questions in there? I don't want to run out of time if people have questions for Teri.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I can.
Yes.
Can you take down your screen?
Dick from Tampa Bay, who's one of our co-founders, said there's a need for patient advocate reps nationwide. Do you have a list of those, or are you also nationwide?
I'm not nationwide. I have done work in other states when it was purely virtual, but I always tell people it's mostly a good idea to find somebody in your local area. There are some national organizations. One is GNAnow.org, and that's greaternationaladvocates.org. If you go to that website, scroll down to the bottom of that website, and there's a very interesting video there about the founder of Greater National Advocates. He was a victim of medical error. He's actually a lawyer. And so now one of his main goals in life is to make patient advocacy so mainstream that within 10 years, nobody in America would think of going through a serious healthcare crisis without having their own private advocate. And advocates, I have different specialties. I take care of very medically complex patients, but I know advocates that just do insurance, that just do behavioral health issues, that just do dementia, things like that. So insurance is also getting very complex right now. So most of the time I can navigate insurance issues. One thing that I'm telling this family that I was telling you about before, because medical error happened to her due to negligence in the facility, she should not pay any more bills. Because when you get an adverse medical outcome, or that's what they call medical error, or in her case, it's neglect. They specifically didn't follow doctor's orders and she got serious contractures. You don't have to pay the bill. So she's been there paying $8,000 or $9,000 a month since last August. And so when I encounter medical error in hospitals, I'll just call the billing department and say, introduce myself very nicely and say, I understand that we had 3 documented episodes of medical error while my client was in your hospital. So I just want to make it clear that I don't want my client to get any bills. So they know what the rules are. And so that's why you need to understand some of the more subtle, unknown kinds of new rules in modern healthcare to properly advocate for yourself. And I would be remiss if I did not talk about the Patient Advocacy Conference in June 16th, and June 16th, and I'll send you the link to that WGN clip. But we are having an all-day conference. For less than $100, you can We have 12 speakers. You get 6 hours of education about different aspects of improving your health literacy. You get breakfast, you get lunch, you get free parking. It's going to be out at the Abington in Glen Ellen, which is a lovely facility and easily accessible.
We're mostly a global organization, so there's many of us here in Illinois.
Okay.
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 There was another question, John.
Yes. As a former ICU nurse, how do we as an advocacy group bring awareness to nursing schools and medical doctor schools, since they get about 7 minutes of training on polio and almost nothing on post-polio syndrome?
Well, I would go in armed with the best succinct article that you can, because they all want to learn more and take better care of their patients, but they do not have time to talk to you for a half hour about it. So if there's really good articles out there, preferably from medical journals, that you can find that they can read in 2 or 3 minutes or less, that would be very helpful, you know. And if there's any kind of a handout or an educational piece that has bullet points, or a brochure, maybe you have brochures, then that would be very, very helpful. But doctors aren't trained to be experts in all medical conditions. I have something called hereditary paramyotonia. My muscles freeze up in the cold, and most doctors have never heard of that before. So I just give them the short story about what it is. It's a neurosynapse defect. And so we talk like that. Any other questions?
Yeah. Crippen from British Polio, many healthcare professionals would deny the existence of post-polio syndrome. What is the best way, and I think you've answered this, but what is the best way to get this past this situation? If your doctor refuses to believe you have a condition, they will never take this into consideration when providing care.
Well, yes, I think educating them is important, but also understanding that you're your own advocate. So you always have to know what your goals of care are, and just speak in bullet points. Doctors speak in bullet points and think in bullet points today. You can't get into any kind of adversarial relationship with them. You can educate them. You can tell them why your condition is special and give them a one-page handout, but you can't control their attitude towards their symptom. You have to be your own best self-advocate.
Great. Diane Wall asked, can we ask for a treatment plan from the doctor? And also, how do we get trained to be an advocate?
That's a great question. There are different organizations. I don't know the ones in other countries, but I do know the ones in this country. I have a program that's mostly geared towards nurses and physicians. It's called Nurse Advocate Entrepreneur. If you go to the Alliance of Professional Healthcare Advocates website, they have a list of all of the training programs in this country, and they're mostly digital online programs. And anybody can be a patient advocate. You don't have to have a medical degree. Most patient advocates in the U.S. are not medically trained.
Okay. Can you send that information to either Ken or Ina?
Sure.
So that the link on that?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. Can you speak to the difference between enacted power of attorney versus not enacted and limits as a result?
Sure, that's a great question. When people can still make their own decisions, like when you go to your lawyer and you set up your power of attorney, they'll ask you, do you want it to become active immediately or only when you cannot make decisions on your own? And if you check off immediately, that means your relative or whoever's your power of attorney can start making decisions on your path immediately. Most people will check off only when I cannot make decisions on my behalf. But the problem is that a lot of people think they can make their own best decisions and they really lose cognitive ability. So in that case, you have to get a doctor's letter to say that they are unable to take care of their own affairs. And sometimes that will involve guardianship attorney to do that too. So there are psychiatrists. The only people that can say that you're not competent to manage your own affairs are the courts. And that involves getting a good psychiatrist to say yes, no, or partial. Good question.
Okay. Can you differentiate between, and I don't know what these acronyms are, between rehab at a SNF and rehab in a rehab facility? Often rehab is offered, but it is a SNF.
SNF stands for skilled nursing facilities. So another name for that is nursing homes. You walk in and the first floor is all pretty and has nice decorating, but the top floor is more the long-term people that cannot take care of themselves and require 24-hour care. So rehab in a skilled nursing facility is usually after you leave the hospital, and you'll be there for no longer than 2 to 3 weeks. And physical therapy has to be charting every day that you're improving. When you hit a plateau, Medicare will not pay for it anymore. So if you go into a rehab facility and you don't feel good and you start refusing therapy, they're going to kick you out faster. There are also hospital-based acute rehab facilities like Shirley Ryan and also Encompass Health up in the Northern Lake County area where I am. And those are excellent, but you have to be strong enough to do 3 hours a day of rehab to go to those places. And so it's great, but it's like a boot camp. And a lot of people that have gotten so weak in the hospital cannot tolerate 3 hours a day.
Yeah. Okay. There are a couple of statements that people have put in the chat. So if everyone is interested in reading them, I'm not going to go through them because they're not questions. But, we'll go from there, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Teri, tell us the one thing you want us to take away from today.
You're your own best advocate. Don't be shy, because it could be life-threatening. If you don't stand up for yourself, nobody else is going to. And when you're sick, it's really important to designate somebody to do that for you, because sometimes people are too sick to advocate for themselves. Everybody in America, Europe, any country in the world today with the problems in healthcare, everybody needs a patient advocate. And I'll send you the link to some organizations that you can find advocates in this country. And I'm not sure about other countries. So, okay.
Thank you so much. We just love hearing from the people who are on the front lines doing the things that we're attempting to do, which is advocate for ourselves and teach others how to do that.
Ina, so can I ask real quick of Teri?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to type it in and what's going fast enough. Last year, I recently ran into a situation where they were putting my mother in for observation. And I found out that if she wasn't there for 3 days, then it would not be covered by Medicare. Can you speak to that?
Right now, because of COVID, there's a waiver. So there's no more 3-day inpatient thing right now, and they're trying to do away with it altogether. But buy the book, How to Be a Healthcare Advocate for Yourself or Your Loved Ones. But right now, so many people are angry about that observation thing that I think with COVID, they're doing away with it. It's not for sure yet. Thank you.
This is a great guidebook. It could not be simpler, and it could be not more direct. It was extraordinary to just read through it.
Thank you very much, Ina. And thank you so much. I'm sorry if I got off on tangents that weren't applicable. I think
okay. I can I reined you back in. You're good.
Okay, good. Okay.
Thank you so much, Teri.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. I mean, I'm always left with, if we don't speak up for ourselves, we will never get anywhere. And that's what we have to be brave enough. We grew up in an era where a doctor walked in with a white coat and it was like God entering the room, and we didn't want to say anything or be a bad girl or a bad boy. And we just wanted to be nice and have a little chat. And It's not the way it is anymore. They've got 7 minutes. We want to take advantage of those 7 minutes and say, this is what's going on with me today. And if I need the help, and if you're not the guy, tell me who is, tell me the woman to go see, and I'm happy to do that. And John McFarland has something there, John? He's right.
You're muted, John.
What did he just post there, Mr. McFarland? What'd you say?
The thing to remember, what you talked about today, patient advocates, yes, you've got to be able to advocate for yourself all over the world. But the healthcare systems are totally different.
Yeah, yeah.
Therefore, a lot of what was being said may not apply in the country that you're in. For
Correct.
example, in the UK, the Access to Medical Records Act 1984 says that you can have access to your medical records unless they will do you some damage. In other words, if somebody's got something on there which says that they're prone to suicide, they can actually delete that part of it, and they can redact it if it's going to cause problems, not to other doctors but to the patient. The other thing is that in a lot of countries, the treatment is free at point of delivery. In Ireland, if you have an accident, they pick you up in an ambulance, they take you off. They don't ask for a credit card. They don't ask for anything like that. You may have private insurance if you want to do other things, and the same in the UK. I can see George nodding. But the other thing is that it is the same, and you do not have these problems of insurance. Comorbidities, yes. The thing about going in and seeing doctors and educating them, yes, you've got to sometimes do that, as I've had to do recently. But the overall point about it is all doctors and all nurses have to go through continuous professional education, and they literally have got it in there. And that is one of the areas which needs to be tackled by not just this group, but by others, to get it into the professional education. There is a continuing educational program for every single profession in medical profession, and you've got to go in. And the other one go through on all of these is, yes, powers of attorney, they don't exist in every country. They actually came into Ireland on the 1st of May. So, they don't exist in every country. They don't go through. You can't do things. And in a lot of countries, the relatives can override what people want. And DNRs do not resuscitate. They don't get filed in the hospital. What happens if you collapse in the street? You collapse in a street and something happens, you are stuck, even if you put down a do not resuscitate. Their job of the ambulance is to save life.
Thank you, John. And the last person, because we're running out of time, who's had his hand up for a while, George Allen, just unmute yourself and go for it.
Yeah, just a quickie. We can all be our own advocates, but people need some kind of guidance, some kind of way of noting down all the stuff. Because if you go in to see a doctor, you're in there and you think, what the hell am I here for? So I just wanted to flag up that a good example from the Lincolnshire Post-Polio Network, they've produced a little, well, it's not the one page that doctors might be comfortable with, but it's a 5-page document that you can actually fill in yourself so that you've got, who you are, who your next of kin is, what you're suffering from, what your allergies are, what kind of age you need, how you deal with anesthetics. All that stuff is really pertinent to PPS. And I know I was trying to dig out another one that was produced in Denmark, which again is an excellent piece that people can write everything down so they're prepared and to ask the right sort of questions. John McFarlane, I'm sure will be able to give the link to the Danish one, but the Lincolnshire Post-Polio Network one is on their website, and you can get that at info@poliosurvivorsnet.org.uk. And I'm sure there must
we'll post. Thanks, George. We'll post the link to that too, because that would be an interesting thing to download to have. Thank you.
I'll send you that link then.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Anna. There you go, Anna. It's on. Over to you, Anna.
All right. Well, I tried to, bring her back to where we needed, because some people will be great writers and not always great speakers. So thank you very much for your patience in that. And the next time we come on board, we will have, who's the next one? I've just forgotten. Who's coming in on the 29th to talk to us?
Is it the 29th or the 22nd? The 22nd.
29th.
29th is the fourth Thursday. Thursday.
That's the 5th.
It's Mr. Allen here, George Allen.
Yeah,
29th.
That's the 5th Thursday, I believe.
No, take a look at the calendar. It's an odd month.
29th.
I know there's problems. George, I know there is problems, but George has switched around twice now his diary. So he has agreed with his diary for the 29th.
Okay. But it is the 5th. It is the 5th Thursday.
Correct.
Oh, so originally I had it down for the 22nd, but because the second Wednesday was the 14th, we wanted to give 2 weeks in between.
Okay.
All right. So the next one's the 29th, and then we'll send out the correct one again. Okay.
Okay. And Mr. Allen is an unbelievable post-polio advocate in Scotland, and the things he's done can be.
No, he isn't.
Oh.
He's an okay kind of guy.
But we can learn from him for global efforts too, what he did in Scotland. So
excellent. Excellent. All right. If that's it, everybody have a peaceful and blessed weekend.